In this video we're going to be changing the oil and filter on the 2012 Hyundai Sonata with a 2.4 liter engine. Obviously we're going to lift the vehicle up and we're going to be changing the oil. Underneath here is a cover which goes right up inside here like this. You just pull these two little clips in here and you pull it down and it gives you access to where the oil drain plug is located. You can see the plug is right up inside here. So we're going to drain this down into this bucket here, and then if you come right up into the front, you'll see this hole right up in the top of this plastic cover here, and there's the oil filter. So let me grab some tools and I'll show you how it's done. Oil drain plug is recessed a little bit, so basically going to use just a socket. It's a 17 millimeter socket with a short extension, and we're just going to remove the drain plug and let it drain out. You can break it loose by hand. And just make sure you have a bucket underneath because it is going to be a little bit messy. I always wear gloves just to avoid a mess. So we'll just let it drain out a little bit. The Hyundais are very messy, because the oil gets up onto the cover. So we'll let it drain out thoroughly, and once it drains out, then we'll come right back. That's why it's a good idea to wear gloves, because you do get really dirty. On this particular vehicle, I've had a lot of complaints from people saying they're leaking oil. Other mechanics will do oil changes like a quick lube or whatever, and they don't clean the oil off, because when you pull that plug out, oil does get up onto this plastic shield up here. So after you do the oil change and put your oil plug back in, just go up there with the rag and dry it all out so you don't have a drip of oil constantly in your driveway or wherever you park your car. So we'll let this drain out a little bit. Once it finishes draining, we'll come back, put the plug in, and then we're going to remove that filter. The way you remove the filter is it's a little bit tight up there. I use a tool like this here, and it opens and expands and goes on the filter, and we can just unscrew the filter out very easily. Now would be the time you change the gasket on your drain plug before installing. Once the oil finishes draining out, we can screw the oil drain plug back in. Screw it in by hand first, or in this case here you're just using a socket to catch it. Turn it in as far as you possibly can by hand. Once you've got it snug against the pan, then you can tighten it up the rest of the way with the ratchet. And it doesn't have to go real tight, just snug and just a little bit more. Alright? And remember what I said about drying off underneath here, because the oil lays up in the top here and you'll definitely have a drop of oil on your driveway or wherever you park it. You'll notice it drips off all over on the plastic shield, so dry it off very carefully so you don't have a mess. All right, once it's all dried off, then you put your cover back in. And the way you do that is you just catch the top up here like this, and you push it, and it snaps right back in. Then we're going to be removing the oil filter, which is located right up in the front right here. This tool, you put it on here. And then you just turn it to loosen it just a little bit. And then you can remove your tool. And again, you want to let this drain out a little bit too, because it's definitely going to make a mess if you try to take this off without it draining out. It's going to go all over your plastic shields up there too. So I always let it drain out thoroughly before you go back and take the filter down. So we'll let this drain out a little bit. And in the meantime, I want to show you that when you take the filter down, you have to make sure that this O-ring right here on the filter comes off also. Sometimes this O-ring sticks up on the top there, and if it does, and you screw this on there, you're going to have an oil leak. So make sure the old O-ring comes down with the filter, and we'll just let that drain a couple minutes more, and then we'll pull that down. Alright, and make sure the O-ring is on here, so we know the O-ring is not stuck up top. And what we're going to do is we're going to put take any oil residue off. And when you put the filter up, you put a slight bead of oil around on the filter here, and you screw it up as tight as you can make it by hand. You don't need to put any tools on it to make it tighter with a wrench or anything like that. Just make it as tight as you possibly can by hand, and dry off any residual oil that may have dripped up on the top there. Biggest complaint I hear about these cars is the oil that drips long after an oil change is done. So take the time and dry it all off, and make sure it's clean. All right, we lower the car down, and I'm going to show you where to put the oil in up on top. So let me lower the car down, and we'll come right back. Once we got the car back down on the ground, we're going to put the oil back in the top here. This is where your oil goes in. You always want to make sure that you use the correct oil. And as you can see, this one calls for a 5W20, which is exactly what we're going to use, 5W20. I did look it up on the computer, and the computer tells me this car takes 4.86 quarts of oil. So we're going to put roughly a little bit more than 4 3/4 quarts of oil in the car. And then after we put the oil in the car, we're going to start it, and we're going to make sure that the oil level is to the full mark. Now the 520 motor oil is what they recommend to go in there. I looked on the computer, and it does say you can use a 530, but in this particular case, a 520 is definitely what you want to be using on it. Just save just a little bit, and we'll start the car up, and we'll make sure that it's full. All right. Before you start it, though, make sure you take your oil funnel out and replace your cap in the car. All right. And we're going to start it up and let it run for a minute, and then we're going to check the oil level. After you let the car run for a minute, then we're going to shut it down, let it stand for just a minute, and we're going to pull the dipstick out, and we're going to confirm that the oil level is to the full area. You can see these little notches on the stick right here. We just make sure that we're in between those two notches, and we'll be good to go. Okay, we're right up to the notch right now, so we're full. And that's it, we're all set. All right, so make sure your dipstick is in, your oil cap is back on, and you're all set. All right, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.